Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
Thank you for the introduction. Let me give you a quick elevator pitch about Promax for those of you that do not know us, and we've had the pleasure of working with some of your properties and managers over the past many years for exterior concrete restoration. So Promax Restoration and Paint Corp is a 30-year-old general contractor in the state of Florida. We've repaired, renovated, restored over 1,000 properties in our 30 plus years in business already, primarily focusing on Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, but we are moving north and west. So we welcome the opportunity to work with any of you folks in the future. I joined Promax from another contractor about 3.5 years ago, and we are developing our design build division of Promax. And basically that is the processes of designing and then building interior and or exterior spaces of condominiums and or co-ops. So I mean in regards to lobbies, corridors, party rooms, kitchens, billiard rooms, movie theaters, anything on the interior of your properties that are common spaces. We do not do residential units, and also any exterior spaces, pool decks, pools, fountains, clubhouses, entrances, anything that may exist that needs renovation or that you would like to add as an amenity, other interior or exterior. So again, my name is Sidnee Steigerwalt. Thank you very much for attending, and I am going to go ahead and share now the presentation for you folks. So let me get that up on the screen. And I believe, hopefully you can see it. It looks like we are
Looks good.
properly sharing. Everything look good, Ashley?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. So as I go through these slides, of course, I'm not going to read them because you folks all know how to read. We are going to do this faster than 2 hours for you. But please feel free to go to the Q&A, as Ashley mentioned. I'm happy to stop at any point, answer any questions. And then, of course, when we complete it, we'll go back to the Q&A as well. But feel free to ask a question, and then Ashley will let me know there's a question to be answered, and we'll go from there. So here we go. Objectives today is when you're looking for and have started conversation with your board of directors for what are the needs and wants of actually doing a renovation, interior, exterior of your building spaces. Project planning, how does that all work? I'm sure a lot of you have probably worked with owner rep firms, project managers. So how do you basically outline from the beginning to all the way to the end of finishing the project, custodials, warranties, and everything in between, hiring, contracts, permitting. There's a lot involved, and unfortunately, it does take quite a bit of time. You're generally looking at somewhere in a year to 18 months range from inception to completion of design and starting the build process of it. So we're going to go through planning and management, and then the processes with board of directors for both management and board of directors for exterior projects and or interior. They're very similar. And how important it is, of course, for communication throughout this process with your design firm and your contractor. If they are not one and the same, such as a design build firm, and you use the more traditional method of hiring a design firm and then bidding it out for construction. And we'll get into that as I step through the processes of the advantage and disadvantages, obviously, of both. And then, of course, conclusion and answering all of your questions. So let's start with identifying the needs for these. There's obviously a number of needs, and that all goes back to the need of getting the projects done, but how do you pay for it? So there's needs and there's wants, and every condominium has their needs of things that need to be done for reasons we'll get into, and then the want. Obviously, need and or want is going to increase the value of the units, the property, having a safe structural sound environment that you're living in. But so let's start out with the exterior. So horizontal locations, I'm referring to pool decks, amenities, any community space, an entrance, ingress, egress. If there's a clubhouse between two pools or excuse me, two buildings, whatever the space may be, exterior. We've not stepped through the door yet. So what are those needs? Primarily, and everybody's very aware of milestones and SIRS that are required now based on our sad failure that happened to a building here in Miami-Dade. So structural, that's obviously first and foremost the biggest priority, are structural repairs. Whether it's the complete exterior facade of your buildings where you've got issues with balcony decks, you've got issues with water intrusion. So due to the age of the building, where it exists, is it on the ocean? Is it on water? Obviously, that just helps to increase the amount of structural repairs. But so you're starting with structural repairs, waterproofing, and when you're doing those types of repairs to pool decks, ingress, egress, any exterior area obviously requires a new finishes, whether it's pavers, porcelain tile, cabanas at a pool deck, gates, anything that needs to be then put back as like or start with a new finish. So in there lies the idea of hiring for design so that one, the structural repairs have been completed that are necessary. Waterproofing and painting is then working to put the finishes down that have been designed and approved, of course, by the association. So second item, of course, would be new spaces or redesigning existing spaces that have become outdated. So areas again, such as your building may not offer any type of children's activity areas and the demographics have changed and now you need areas for incoming families with children. So adding in splash pads and items like that for children, and then jacuzzis or putting greens. Like I said, pickleball courts are very popular these days. Adding in community space on a pool deck that doesn't exist, fire pits, barbecues, things that may either exist that are in need of repair and or redesign, or to add a new amenity to your building exterior. And then again, ingress, egress from the street to entrances, portico shares that are failing that need to be rebuilt or redesigned. Again, green spaces, seating areas waiting for guests or pickup. So anything with your exterior ingress, egress. So those would be identifying again on an exterior surfaces of your buildings of first making sure you do the repairs and then doing the design for those instead of going back with the same thing. This is obviously your opportunity as management and board of directors to increase the value of the property, the enjoyment of living in a condominium, and obviously taking care of the structural issues that need to be addressed before any design work. So just some photographs, obviously, of things that you've probably all experienced, or if you're lucky, have not in your buildings as management and or board of directors. But you see pictures from failed waterproofing on pool decks or whatever concrete horizontal surfaces to structural repairs, as the center photo shows, of deteriorated concrete where rebar is exposed. And now it's, the structural integrity of the building needs to be identified. From failing pools where water line tiles have failed to come off and now your pool is leaking, to stairwells and just parking decks, any type of large horizontal or vertical that are in need of repair. And I'm sure probably many of you have seen this type of a an issue with your buildings. And if not, congratulations. Here's some just photographs that are projects that we as Promax have either designed and or built, showing you amenity spaces that were older, needed updating. So from building new cabanas to updating a porte cochere to building a beautiful new restaurant, pool deck, exterior. The bottom right is just a photograph of a project down here in Miami where the pool deck didn't exist. It was just concrete, so completely new pattern and seating area, and adding a restaurant actually onto the deck of that particular condominium. So just some photographs of some of the projects that we've completed, to show you what can be done. And a lot of times what I get asked often is, well, we're not sure what we want. So what you hire a design build firm to help you determine what it is that you would like to see. And then their job is to also share with you things that you didn't even think about as a design build firm. Second part of the design process is, again, identifying interior. So same process. Why are your lobbies, your corridors, or any amenity spaces? Is that buildings have water damage, buildings have sadly sometimes fire damage, and obvious wear and tear of the residents residing in any of the common areas that get used that need to be updated, and or there has been issues with it. But commonly, carpet wears out, design is 25 years old, and you're wanting to increase the values of the units for the unit owners, the enjoyment obviously of living there. But all of these spaces within the building that are showing signs of wear and tear, and decreasing, sadly, the overall value of the property when you don't make the renovations. And of course, as you all know, residing here in South Florida, the number of new buildings that have been built since 2005. So we're looking at 20 years in that very short time, the number of new buildings that go up that every building is competing with, when properties are going on the market. Well, we're looking for a newer building. So obviously keeping your building up to date with those spaces or adding new spaces, again, identifying the need and the want for the interior. Just some photographs again of spaces that need renovation due to water damage. Sadly, probably many of you have experienced this in your buildings, of water damages from risers that fail or sprinklers that go off or whatever the situation may be within a unit, and or just it hasn't been updated for 25 years and it's time for an update again to increase value of the property and the enjoyment of living there. So again, these are just some updated photographs of some of the spaces within properties here in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Of typically these buildings are in the 20 to 25 range, some a little earlier. The top left is actually the Four Seasons Hotel in West Palm that we basically rebuilt all new windows and then did all of the ballrooms and all the common areas of that hotel. So again, just some photographs of work that has been done in bathrooms at pool decks, lobbies, party rooms, areas that obviously have been through a renovation project. So let's talk now about the second part of the processes to engage with a design build firm, and or design and contractor. So let me talk about that for a minute in regards to the traditional in your buildings where you hire the design firm, and the design firm, after vetting and hiring, has been hire the design firm. They do a design for you, work through the design process, which we'll get into with your committee or board. Then it goes out to bid with a general contractor who is going to build the approved design by board and membership. So that's the traditional model that has been happening here for 25 years of renovating or longer of our condominiums and co-ops here in Florida. But more recently, the design build firm process is they're going to design the space for you, and then they're going to give you pricing for what this is going to cost to build so that this can then be, again, provided to membership to go to a material alteration vote that majority of buildings require a material alteration vote with membership. And then, of course, well, how much is this going to cost us? So your design build firms are providing you the design and the build costs so that it really increases the amount of time, or I should say, excuse me, decreases the amount of time that this whole process takes from the traditional designer to then bidding it out to the GC. So working with a design build firm during this process, obviously you're going to interview. And that's, again, the same process that you would interview any vendor, is making sure that they have the experience first and foremost to work through a design with you, asking for inspirations, asking for presentations of inspirations of what your spaces that you're looking for can be turned into. Understanding that there's architecture involved, the location, the name of the building. Are you on the water? Are you on the intercoastal? Are you out west? So making sure that the design build firm that you're possibly engaging with understands all of that, and they're just not a design company that's going to design and doesn't understand the processes of working in a condominium building. Then you're going to go into, once you've done that process, you're going to request that proposal from the design build firm that you've interviewed and have a number of design. I would suggest design proposals from 2 or 3 design build firms, just like you would with any vendor. Do your bid comparisons, have your conversations with them, hold second interviews if necessary until you are comfortable that are going to be able to build a relationship between the designer, their team, and your team of management and board of directors. So once you've narrowed it down, you feel comfortable with the design build firm that you have been vetting, is obviously moved to contract with that design build firm to start on the conceptual design with you for, again, whether it's interior, exterior, or both. So you're going to want to make sure that you really vet and hire and make sure they understand that they're working in a living building. It's not going to be closed down. You've got residents that have to get to their units, in an 8-hour period where the work's going to be done eventually, and understand a little bit about construction, because a lot of times design firms do not understand construction and costs to move structural items. You're not going to move building columns. You're not going to move building beams. So the designer needs to understand that they may want to raise the ceilings in your corridors to make them higher, but they can't because there's concrete slabs 4 inches above, and you've got conduit and Cat 5 and fire sprinklers running through there. So understanding that your design build firm also understands construction is going to be a benefit to you to speed up the process as well.
Hi, Sidney. We got a question. Rodney asked, does the design build firm include the engineering of the project?
Well, that's a great question. And if you give me 2 seconds. The engineering and or architect of record, and we'll get into that. That's a great question, and we're going to get there. That's the process once you've done the design build, but typically the design build firm provides you with a list of architects, because an architect of record is required to do the signed and sealed drawings for permitting and construction. So some design build firms will provide you with the engineering documents and or architect of record, which are your construction set for bidding and permitting. But I would suggest that when you are vetting and hiring a design build firm, is that is a third party. And the reason I say that is because the liability of the designer to the construction, the liability of them then doing the construction set, is if they have made any errors, there is nobody to check it. There's no checks and balance system. So if you do design documents, which are going to be an actual interior design set of the design with elevations, that then is provided to the architect of record, third party, who then does the field measurements and verifies everything that the design firm will provide you, and make sure that his construction set covers everything from ADA compliance, because maybe the designer missed that every door opening needs to be 36 inches, and any good design firm knows that. I'm just using that as an example. But we would recommend that you hire your architect of record for the construction set and or drawings for permitting and construction. And again, I'll address that a little bit further into the presentation. All right. So again, your same process as far as engaging for the design build firm. You're going to now go to the part where same process. You're going to vet and hire. I believe, I'm just looking here quickly, same thing, aligning with everything that you want done. And again, providing what you don't know you want, which again is the purpose of hiring a designer, is because you all have ideas of what you'd like to see in your building, things that but you don't even know that you want in your building. And that's the job of the design build firm, to lead you through that, to guide you. Tremendous amount of communication and sharing and conversation is necessary in this process as well, from the interview, inspiration. Spend as much time as needed, because you're going to appreciate and understand why it's so important that you really do meet and discuss before engaging in a contract with a design build firm, because it's so important that you all are on the same wavelength, the same ideas, but also open to ideas from your design team when they're engaging with you. So now we get to the conceptual design phasing. You've signed your contract, and now it's time to start the actual design process. So there's 4 phases of the design process. And first phase is project programming, and that's basically meeting, conversing, walking the spaces with your design firm, board of directors, committee, management, whomever is part of the process, is to make sure that it's very important that the summary scope of what is being designed is very well understood in that first phase. So again, writing a summary up, reviewing it, walking the spaces, and making sure that when they come back with the second phase, they say, oh, well, we thought you were also going to be designing the bathrooms off of the party room. So phase 1 is obviously the first phase, and very important that your design firm understands exactly what they're designing for you. Either a renovation of the same space, reconfiguring of the space, or adding a new space, is make sure that that project program is understood by both sides of exactly what is going to be designed for your conceptual design. Second phase. This is where the designer team is going to start the process after listening and reviewing. They're going to come back and provide you with a preliminary schematic design. Palette, meaning finishes of, let's use a party room as an example in your building. You want a complete new party room. You want a new kitchen in the party room. You want new lighting, seating, carpet, millwork, drapery, whatever is in that party room. So they're going to bring, or it's the entire building. So it could be every amenity space in the building, the lobby, the hallways. So again, whatever the scope of work is, that space is, make sure that, 1, you understand that. And then 2, on the schematic design, is that all of the preliminary materials, colors, finishes, drawings, what the millwork is going to be, a reflected ceiling plan. That's where all of your ceiling finishes. Let's say you have an acoustical ceiling and you want a drywall ceiling, or vice versa. So this is where the design team is going to bring back to the member, not the members, but again, you want to make it either board of directors, management, and or a committee, but not to your membership. You're not there yet. You want to make sure that you're working with a small group of people, because I'm sure you're all aware that when you try to put 10 or 200 people in the same room and decide upon colors, finishes, nobody's ever going to agree. So do yourselves all a favor when you start this process, is that you have a committee and or board of directors, or a number of the board of directors, and of course management, to work with your design firm, so that as this process continues, it can actually, something can actually get accomplished. Because unfortunately, when you put too many people in the room, everybody, design is subjective. I don't like that color. I like this color. Keeping yourself open to, this is for the good of the building, based upon the architecture of the building, the location of the building, and that it may not be the look that you would enjoy as it is in your unit, but that this is for the entire building. And sometimes that's hard to do, but the design firm will help lead the member, the board of directors and or committee in, well, I know you like blue, but you're in the middle of everything green. So again, that process is discussed often through the schematic design phase. So again, everything is submitted, discussed, and once the feedback has been provided from the committee and or board in this phase 2, that's when the design team is going to take all that information, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you suggested, and they're going to go to phase 3. So here's just some samples of what you would see from your design team in the second phase. So a simple Photoshop sketch, as of the top left corner shows, of what the lobby may look like. The middle photo shows a new front desk with lighting, back wall. So this is the phase where you're going to start seeing schematic drawings. These are temporary, the beginning process of drawings with some elevations. The one on the bottom actually happens to be a client of ours right now, where they want just a new front desk. So on the top right, you'll see a photograph where we've done some preliminary drawings. We've shown them some inspiration of what it's going to look like. And then you'll see a material board of some of the finishes. So this is what you should expect in phase 2, schematic phase, where they're going to bring preliminary palettes and finishes to you. So now we go to phase 3 of the conceptual design, and this is where we're really now developing the design. So after a period of time from phase 2 to 3, you're typically going to look, depending again on the scope, the size of the areas, anywhere from 3 weeks to say 8 weeks, to provide the design team to take all of the feedback from the schematic design and provide it back to the board and or committee with now phase 3. Phase 3 can take 2 or 3 iterations of the design until the board is satisfied with the entire scope of drawings, all of the finishes, all the colors. And at this point, when they come back with the design development documents / materials, this is where the design team should be bringing back to you all the material boards of all the materials in this scope of work space. They should be bringing back to you photorealistic 3D renderings of the spaces and presenting this to the board of directors and or committee for a final approval. But this process may take 1 to 3 until the board is satisfied with the tweaks made from the design. So again, the design team's going to come back with their initial phase 3 of the finishes, the elevations, all of the materials, listen to your feedback. So typically the board of directors will say, well, we love 95% of it, but we're not keen on the lobby lighting, let's say. Okay, so now the designer is going to come back with two different or maybe three different new options for consideration and conversation by the committee and or board of directors. So once those are completed and the board now has seen the third and final conceptual design of the space, the renderings would be completed. Of course, you don't want to keep changing renderings. They will cost monies. So make sure that before the renderings are done, that you are all in agreement that this is the look that you want for your lobby. Once the renderings have been completed, they obviously would be given back again to the board and all the sample boards, all the materials, and ready for board to approve and then start to present to your membership. And that can be done at any time after, of course, the renderings are done, that management and the board is ready to present to membership. Obviously, there's lots of things that have to happen while this process of design is going on. Management informing the membership that there will be a material alteration vote for the change of the space and or funding, because that's always the most important part of any project is this funded? Are there reserves? Or is this going to be those two bad words of a special assessment? And of course, nobody likes to pass special assessments, but we all know that sometimes they're necessary because there's no reserves for the project. But I do know that reserves now have to be funded, and that's a whole nother conversation and a whole nother CEU class. But during this process, obviously, of finalizing the design is working simultaneously with membership to know that there will be a material alteration vote of an approved design by the board of directors. So again, at the end of phase 3, the board is going to approve the final design. The photorealistic renderings will be done. The material boards will be completed. And then when you're ready, your design team will present to your membership. And that presentation should consist, obviously, of a before and after PowerPoint presentation, the renderings, the material boards, so that they can touch and feel and be able to ask all the questions about the actual design. And of course, what's typical and we hear all the time is, well, why are we changing the floor? We love the floor. Or why are we this? Or I don't want you to do that. Or so we do our best as the design team to take that onus off of a board of directors and or management in that having these questions answered by your design team and or collectively with the board of directors and managers, so that it's not all on you. Put it back on your design firm to help you with that when the presentation occurs. So again, that membership presentation, of course, would be scheduled with whenever the board of directors and management were ready to have that presented to membership for voting. So again, here's just some what you would expect to see as far as the renovations, the photorealistic renderings of the spaces that have been approved. And these are just some of the designs that we have completed and gone to renders so that we could provide then the presentation to your membership. And you'll see on the bottom there, obviously, one of the documents that would go part of your ID set, which is the last phase we're going to get into, the documents that actually are provided to you. So besides renderings, is you're going to get a whole package of documents that are part of phase 4. So again, phase 4, project drawings and specifications. This is obviously very important that you've approved the design from your design firm, but now you need to take all of this documentation to the architect of record. So the design team is going to provide you with an ID set, an interior design set, and it is going to be what you see to the right, showing a photograph of everything that is to be designed, the dimensions, where it goes, the finishes, there's finish schedules. And this is obviously very important that that ID drawing set is provided to you, as well as the specification book of all of the materials that are in that design. So you're going to receive what we call a specifications custodial every item that is designed, from an exit sign to the furniture, to the flooring, to the paint colors, to the lighting, all of that is provided to you along with the design ID set. Through the process of this, phase 1 through phase 4, your design firm typically requires a deposit, and then they will require payment after each phase has been completed and signed off. So first phase, a deposit and sign off of a summary scope of work. Second phase, schematic design. They've provided that. The conversations have been had with board and management, signed off, invoiced. When phase 3 is completed, the design has been approved, the renderings have been provided, and it is a final phase 3. They're going to ask for invoicing again. And then when you provide them the final phase 4 of all the drawings, all the specifications, everything that is needed to then build this, is they would provide you then with their final invoice. So you're paying typically through a design build firm, typically deposit, and then as each phase is completed, you make the payment. So it's not, here's $100,000 and wait for each of these phases. Again, your contract, it's also very important with your design build firm on the design side of it, is your deliverable dates. So as you engage with your design firm, the contract is going to have each phase with the amount of monies, as well as the deliverable date, so that you can know that as a phase is completed and signed off, let's say there's 8 weeks until phase 3 is due. Phase 3 is signed off, 8 more weeks for phase 4. So you'll always know before you as you enter into this process of 4 phases, you're going to know exactly how long this process is going to take. And that depends solely on the amount of spaces that are being designed. So let's say it's a management office, for example. Management office may be a 3-month process. If it's an entire building interior or a massive pool deck, obviously the larger the space, the more spaces, the longer the design team is going to need to actually design and go through these 4 phases. But again, make sure that your contract that you enter into has each phase amount and each phase deliverable dates, and making sure that stays on track with both management and Bill and the board of directors, because as a phase is completed, it needs to be signed off in order to start the next phase. So it's really team effort. It's a team effort between the board and committee and management, along with your design firm, to make sure that they're meeting the deliverable dates and that the presentations and conversations and approvals don't take forever, because obviously that's just going to prolong the whole process. Here's an example of what your architect is going to receive from your design build firm, so that they can prepare this construction set for the bidding, permitting, and of course, construction. So that ID set in phase 4 is provided to the association. Engaging with your architect of record can be tricky. I'll explain 2 thought processes here. You can engage with the architect prior to completing the design and being provided with the phase 4 documents, so that the architect can start his process of doing his construction set of field measurements. So while he's going to take the information from the ID set provided by the interior design firm, and implement that into his construction set, ID sets are not construction sets, so they can start the process. However, if you need a material alteration vote and there's a chance that you don't get the material alteration vote quorum number that you need based on your condo docs, then you've spent money with an architect that now you're going to have to try again to get that vote. So do you hire him during the process with the design build firm, Or do you wait to hire the architect to do the construction set until after you get your material alteration vote? And we've experienced it in our firm both ways, where sometimes they engage prior. We have not had a design not approved by membership, so they've not had that issue, but we've also worked with clients where they waited to hire the architect, such as Mirador 1200, where they waited until they got the vote of membership, and then they were vetting and hiring, or vetting, but they had not hired. So it really depends on your situation and what you believe the chances of getting a material alteration vote number that you need based on your condo docs. If you feel confident, then start with the architect vetting and hiring so that you can again reduce the overall time to get to the actual construction of the approved design. So again, the ID set, the specifications are all provided to your third-party architect, and then they start the process of creating the construction set. So now vetting and hiring an architect.
I do have a quick
Sure.
question, Sidnee.
Sure.
What do I do if well, let me see, hold on a second. What if the architect hired before vote and the vote doesn't make it?
Exactly. So you've spent money hiring the architect. So the process starts over, as probably all of you are aware as management and or board of directors, that if that vote does not work out, then obviously you're going to have your architect stop any work he's doing, and they're going to bill you for the work they have done thus far. So obviously the communication again between management, architect, design firm, board is to say, we did not get the vote, stop working. We're going to try again in 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever, or a year passes, and you try again to get the vote, then you can start again. But sadly, if you go the route of hiring the architect before the material alteration vote, then you take the risk of having to pay the architect for the work they had done for you up to that point. So again, it's risky to hire them prior versus waiting to hire them after you get the vote. So as I was going to start in this section of the architectural firm, is that you could start the process of vetting, getting your proposals from your architects, sitting down and talking with them, asking for their references, of course, like you would as any vendor. So as it's here on the screen showing you, start the process, interview, make sure they know how to do a construction set. Also, something that's very important to understand as a board of director and management is that when you are vetting your architectural firm, you want to make sure that the architectural firm often are design firms as well. If you have approved a design and you have a membership vote for the approved design, you can make slight modifications to it, but you can't make major changes, obviously, to a material alteration vote because that's what they voted on. So you'd have to re-vote if an architect firm that's been hired to do the construction set decides to try to become a design firm. So it's important that when you're interviewing architectural firms that they understand that what you're engaging them to do with you is creating a construction set and not recreating a design. And there's plenty of architectural firms out there that's all they do. So just be certain when you start the vetting process, they understand that they can't change the design because it's been approved by membership. Their job is to create the construction set in AutoCAD for permitting by your city's governing permitting department. And then, of course, be able to use that for the contractor to build the approved design. Architects are there to make sure that what the ID set from the design firm has provided can be built. And I mean that again by what I had said earlier, in that they want to raise the ceiling or they want to change the complete configuration of the lobby to make it more functional. But in the middle of a room sits a large structural column. Well, obviously, you're not going to move a structural column. You can, but it costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's very important that the architect that you are vetting understands that they are there to create the construction set and make sure it meets all building codes and all ADA and that it can be built. And that's why the architectural firm, which you'll see here in a couple more sections, that they are willing to work with the design firm because they're really one and the same and they're cross-checking each other to make sure that what was designed and approved and voted on by membership can be built. So again, back to that question, vet your architect, but you might not necessarily have to actually go to contract. So get his contract, give it to your association attorney to review and redline. And when you get that membership vote, then complete the process of the contract and hiring the architect to start the construction set for you. But again, it's really no different than vetting and hiring a design build firm or any other vendor that you folks do business with in your condominium buildings. All right, so again, requesting the proposal, getting to the executed contract and beginning the process. Again, your architect's contract should have the same deposit, deliverable dates. You need to know how long it's going to take, and that's important in the vetting process. Everybody's busy. Everybody in the state of Florida is just overwhelmed with work between engineers of records, architect of records, contractors. Everybody's busy. So make sure that you ask them, how long is it going to take you to create and submit your construction set to us for review and approval? Oh, well, I need 6 months. Well, there again, that holds up the process of this whole process if they are not able to do this in a typical 30, I'd say 45 to 60 days is the typical time that an architect takes the ID set and turns it into a construction set to then begin the permitting process. Again, the permitting process can be started on while the architect is creating the construction set. So you don't wait until the construction set is approved and then submit it to your city building department for approval. The first draft can go into the city, and as it progresses through the construction set completion, the architect can be submitting updated drawings to the city so that that also shortens the process of getting your permit approved for construction. Once your permit's approved, then your contractor, of course, is assigned to that permit, and you begin the demolition and build of the approved design. But so again, hiring your architect, making sure that you're comfortable with them, you have all the deliverable dates, you understand the process with them, and then execute and start the process. And make sure that your architect of record and your design firm sit down and review everything before that completed construction set is sent out for bidding with general contractors, or you've already approved the design build firm to be your contractor as well. Same with your design build general contractor. During the beginning of this, I mentioned about a design build firm versus the old model of designer and then contractor. So if you're going to work in the manner of design build, make sure that when you vet the design build firm for the design, at the same time you're vetting them for the actual construction. So the typical process is the RFP goes out to the contractor. The contractor provides you with his bid proposal, the sealed bid. Management and or architect of record can prepare your bid comparison. You start the process of vetting, you're interviewing until you select the general contractor that you feel is the right fit to provide you with the design that your membership has voted on. So whether you vet and hire the design build firm for the whole process, or you stick to the traditional model of design and then the design build firm still bids on their design. So as in ProMax, we will design it and then we will bid on the approved construction set like any other GC, because we certainly understand that you typically want 3 to 5 bids to do your bid comparison and start the vetting and hiring process. So again, whether it's the traditional model of a design and then a GC, or a design build firm that does the entire process with you, or they do the design and then they bid on the construction. So same process. Vet, review, interview as many times as necessary until you as management and a board of directors is comfortable that you've selected the right contractor. Engage obviously with your attorney for review of the contract and start the process. There's a lot of things that happen in between the designer providing you with the ID set and specifications to the contractor being awarded to design, to now implement the approved design. So think about all of the FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, basically. All the flooring, wall coverings, lighting, furniture, kitchens, baths, pool deck materials, whatever is in that FF&E has to be purchased. The purchase can be done by the contractor you hire, all of the materials, and or your design firm can procure the materials for you. All the materials that were specified can be procured, typically with a markup, which ranges anywhere from 20 to 25%, and then is purchased by your design company and delivered to the site for the contractor to install. Everything from the flooring to the lighting to the furniture to the paint, everything can be purchased, procured by your design firm and or be purchased by your general contractor. So based on the decision of who's going to purchase all the FF&E is going to determine the RFP that's sent out for the GCs to bid on. It could be a construction materials and labor bid, or it can be a complete 100% purchase of all FF&E, construction materials, and labor. And that gets a little tricky, and I'm happy to answer questions about that because again, it depends on how you contract from the inception of design build, whether you're going to procure through your design team or you're going to procure through your contractor of all the FF&E. So again, same
we do
process.
have some questions, Sidnee.
Sure.
So, can there be delay penalties imposed for firms not meeting communicated timelines?
Absolutely. Like most contracts, you have liquidated damages. I would suggest that any contractor that you enter into with a design build firm, that you have liquidated damages. So as an example, phase 3 is the most important part of the design because that's where you are now seeing the first 2 phases come to life, of schematic to conceptual. But in that contract, it's very important that you have liquidated damages, that if a deliverable date is 8 weeks and they don't meet that, then definitely liquidated damages. You were supposed to deliver that to our as per the contract on March 1st, and it's March 10th, and you're now asking me to set up the meeting. Well, you're 10 days delayed, so absolutely there should be liquidated damages for them not meeting it, unless of course there's communication as to why. But absolutely, your contracts from the design to the build and your architect should all have liquidated damages. That's just good business practice because as probably many of you have experienced, and if you haven't, not getting things done when it's supposed to be done, and you've shared this with membership, this is what's going to happen for the monies that we're spending, and it doesn't happen. Yes, somebody needs to be held accountable, and that should be your design build firm and or your contractor. So make sure that you do have liquidated damages in your contracts. Again, whether you take the traditional model with your design firm or you do design and build.
Perfect. And one more, can a hallway committee purchase the items, for example, like light fixtures?
Okay, so great question again. Anybody can make the purchase, again, depending on your contract, but what any design build firm will tell you is this. let's say you've got a 30-story high rise and you're going to redo all the lighting in the ceiling and let's say wall sconces or unit lighting or wall wash lighting above the door, whatever that lighting may be in your corridors as the example. And the committee of whoever that may be from the board and or membership says, well, okay, we like the light you suggested, but we want to buy it. I can share with you all that the committee will not get the pricing that a procurement company gets. So let's say there's 1,500 or 2,000 high-hat lights that are going to be replaced in your ceiling corridors. When I go to my vendor, my supplier, and I buy 2,000 of those lights as a procurement company, I get a much better price because I buy volume. So one project is 1,200 lights, and the hallway committee goes and buys 1,200 lights. He's going to get those lights at $35 a light. But because I buy thousands of lights in a year, I'm going to get that light at $15 a light. Now I will mark that light up, but even with a markup, I am going to get a better price as a procurement company than a committee buying lights for their hallways. So it happens. It's happened to us where, well, we want to buy that sofa. Okay, I'm going to give you that sofa at $35,000, marked up, custom made sofa. But the board says, well, we want to go to our person that we know and they pay $37,000 for that sofa. Fine. And most design build firms will work with you on maybe a specific custom item, but please keep in mind that design build designers and or design build firms make monies on the procurement, not the design fee necessarily. So yes, they're being paid for their time and expertise and knowledge and design knowledge to provide you with the design through those phases, but they also make money procuring, and or so does the contractor. So if you allow the contractor to purchase all the FF&E, he's going to mark it up 20 to 25%. So either on the front end or the back end, you're paying a markup for all the FF&E, but typically the design firm and or the contractor have much better wholesale pricing than you can buy retail. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Any more questions?
Nope, not right now.
Okay. So again, back to, your process now of you're going to hire your design build general contracting firm, go through the same process, get your bids, do your comparison, interview, make sure everything is understood by all parties, and then, of course, go to contract. And again, conversation between your contractor, your architect of record, and your designer. There's a lot of people involved and a lot of moving parts that it's very, very important that communication and documentation is handled by all parties involved. And typically your manager and or assistant manager is going to make sure that all these parties are collectively working together to get to the end result of having a beautifully designed new space, from the design to the architect to everything that's involved with construction, phasing, scheduling, and down to completion of the project with the general contractor. So the conversations between all parties and understanding and a written documentation through this whole process of the designer, the architect, the contractor, is that everybody has a good working relationship. And obviously, if there's a bump in the road, is regroup, converse, and understand where the problem may lie within design, architect, contractor, if you're not going to use a design build firm, which, as I believe you probably all realize now, hiring a design build firm eliminates a lot of the miscommunication that can happen between designer, architect, and contractor. But if that is the path that would be followed in your particular building, then just make sure that the entire process is meeting, discussions, on-site visits, that everybody's on the same page before you start the process of demolition and construction of your approved design. Basically, I just went through all this. Make sure that you have everybody on the same page, the permitting is done, and then you start with your process of the demo and build, and have weekly or bi-weekly meetings. Make sure the designer is in the meeting, make sure the architect's in the meeting, and make sure the contractor's in the meeting. Do not invite your residents to these meetings, but obviously board members, management, and that team, because if you miss those meetings and you miss the communication between all parties, you're going to go back to liquidated damages in a contract. So all these people, all these firms need to have liquidated damages in their contracts, so that if you're told in your contract for construction that it's a 18-month long or 8 months or however long the construction is from demolition to completion, that you have these weekly meetings or bi-weekly as it ramps up and things are going well. Maybe you only have to do it every other week, but project timelines, schedules, communication is all very key to making sure that this project is completed. Permits are closed out, custodials of all materials are provided, and you have a big grand opening party for your membership that you get your contractor, your design firm to pay for. And then everybody gets the enjoyment of these new spaces and the monies that they've obviously had to pay to have an updated space and or complete building. Some more pictures of pretty spaces that were renovated, hallways that we've done, lobbies that we've done, that a process, as we've just went through. It can be one space that can take 3 months, or an entire building that can take a year, and then another year or 18 months or 2 years to demolish and renovate. But it's all worth it. It's all worth the aggravation, because obviously the value of the property is increased and the enjoyment of living in the building has increased as well. So thank you very much. I am open for questions anytime. I believe Ashley's going to share my contact information, so feel free to email me, text me, call me. I am happy to answer anybody's questions, be a resource to any of you at any time. And obviously, if any of you have any of this work coming up, we would welcome the opportunity to at least be interviewed.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sidney. It was great. I did go ahead and launch the poll. We will take some questions. I see there's still a few, but for those of you who do want to jump off, you're free to. Like I said, I did launch the poll to get your feedback on how we did today. So if you could please take that, we would really appreciate it. As Sidney mentioned, I will be sharing her contact information in the follow-up email. I will also be including the presentation and a video recording for this webinar, as well as all of our future courses. And I will be providing Sidney with the attendee list. That way our property managers can get their CEUs. So with that, we'll go ahead and answer a few questions here. Let's see here. Should there be initials with dates, times as each company and rep from association that this was approved?
Absolutely. In each process, from hiring the design build firm to the architect to the contractor, is that through the 4 phases of design, you absolutely want approvals of each phase. And your design firm will require that, because again, the deliverable dates are based upon presentation and then approval by the board/committee. So it's very important that it is signed off. And so if it's presented on March 1st, March 5th is the deadline for approval to then meet phase 3, which let's say is June 1st. So if there's no written approval, that kind of leaves a contract open. So yes, it's very important that the designer and or architect and or contractor provides you with a document that says this is the date, it's been approved, we need a signature, everybody signs and dates it, and of course keeps that for their records so that you keep the contract deliverables on time. Well, that's not what the contract said. Yeah, yes, it is. The contract said this is when I need to do it. I need you to sign off by here and then meet my next deliverable date. So signatures, written documentation, written summaries are all very important through this whole process to keep it on track.
I do see a housekeeping item here. When you registered, you did need to add your CAM license. So we do have that with the attendee report. So we will go ahead and get you your credits. We should already have your CAM license. I see one other question on here. Will Promax bid on a project as GC that they did not do the design for?
Great question. Yes, we will. Absolutely. We do a lot of that work as well. We may not be the designer, but for the past 30 years, we have renovated many condominiums here in South Florida, but we did not design. And I might have mentioned it, and if I missed it, I apologize. I joined the firm about 3.5 years ago to create, and we created our design build division. So we do our own in-house design. We have licensed interior designers on staff. So we will design and build. But if you have engaged with a designer in the traditional model and the design has been approved and the membership has voted on it and you've got an RFP construction set ready for bidding, we are happy and appreciate the opportunity to do the construction of another designer's design.
Perfect. It says here, nothing was mentioned about certificates of insurance and or performance and payment bonds. Please elaborate.
Okay. So obviously in a condominium building, anybody that you engage with to do work for you has to have liability, general liability, work comp. Otherwise, they can't work within your associations. So your design build firm better have certificates of insurance, all their licensing that's required between being a general contractor, being a licensed interior designer, which is not required anymore in the state of Florida for interior design. However, it's very important that all your certificates of insurance, obviously up to date, what is the general liability, what is all the requirements that any of your associations require, absolutely make sure that all three, design build firm, architect, and or GC, all have the required certificates. In regards to performance and payment bonds, I certainly would suggest that on the general contract side. So when you get to the point of engaging with a general contractor to do the construction, is that you ask for a P&P bond. They typically run 3 to 5%, like any exterior concrete restoration project, or majority of the vendors that you folks work with in your buildings. Bonds can run anywhere from 3 to 5%. And of course, that's on the contract sum. And they are good for 1 year, typically 1 year from substantial completion. They can be extended for as many years as you'd like. Obviously, that is an additional cost to the association, but it's important that you obviously first and foremost have all the correct licensing and insurance. And then secondly, getting a performance and payment bond from your general contractor. Performance and payment bonds could be necessary on the design aspect of it, but as long as you have a solid contract with deliverable dates, that's probably not necessary because of the added cost. And I've not seen that on a design contract, but not unheard of. So if that's something that your association would want to engage with the designer with a P&P bond, again, I believe most design firms are bondable. I know certainly there's firms out there that are not bondable, but certainly a good thing to do on the construction side is having a P&P bond. And again, that's based upon the value of the contract. If you're looking at a $50,000 design or you're looking at a $5 million construction, by all means, get a P&P bond.
Just a few more housekeeping items. Yes, again, I can see that you're on here. I have the attendee list, so you will get your credits. We have your CAM license from when you registered. I'll be giving that to Sidnee, so that's how you're going to get your credits. I will be emailing out the presentation and the recording, so that will come out. Let's see here. Two more questions I see on here. Sidnee, what markets do you work in?
Florida.
Yep.
Florida. And
Yes.
obviously, we are a state certified general contractor. So between the design and build, anywhere in Florida, we're located here in Miami, but we have an office north in West Palm. We're opening an office in Tampa. We've been working over there for years from Tampa South. We just didn't have an office. So as we continue to grow our business, right now we have 400 plus of our own W-2 employees. We self-perform the work. So not only do we design it, we self-perform. There are certain subcontractors as far as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, which when you do a project for interior or exterior, typically your general contractor will sub to MEP contractors and self-perform the most of the work, which I would recommend as you would enter into this process with your buildings, that you make sure that your GC is self-performing a majority of it, because that's going to affect the outcome of price. So if he's going to subcontract everything, you have a subcontractor's markup, then you have a GC markup, and who pays that fee is your residents. So to get more benefit out of the cost is having a GC that self-performs the majority of the work, from demolition to installation of the finishes. So flooring, carpeting, lighting, the electrician may run the conduit or the wiring, but you want your GC to make sure that he's doing the majority of the work self-performed. So yes, he's still making his revenue, but you're not having markup after markup after markup.
Perfect. And we have one last question, so we'll go ahead and take that one before we sign off. There are numerous clauses for liability. How can the HOA be instructed to require these necessary docs?
Definitely engaging with your association attorney. So your design architect and or GC firm is going to provide you with their contract. Typically, it's going to go to your association attorney, and he's either going to redline the contract received from the vendor, and or in some, I'd say 50% of my cases, is the association attorney provides me with their contract, and we redline until we come to, obviously, until we come to terms. All the liability that is the responsibility of your vendor, the designer, architect, or contractor, obviously has liability clauses in every contract of materials don't show up on time, or it delays the project, or the GC doesn't have enough men and it delays the project. So you've got liquidated damages for time, and you have the liability of what each party is responsible for in the process of design, architect, and construction. So liability primarily falls on those three parties, not the association, unless it's in a case of an approval. As we talked about, I'm sure you've all heard of that nasty word, change order. We're working on the exterior of a building. The facade envelope has an issue. The engineer of record identifies, provides a detail to the contractor provides a change order, and now the change order sits in the hands of the board of directors for 3 months and delays the repair of that particular item that was not in the original scope of work. It's no different for a renovation process. So what's important is the time liability primarily falls on those three vendors. But if timing approvals from a board of director, that liability then falls on the board of directors to make timely decisions and provide written approval so that the contractor, architect, or designer can move forward with the process. But it's primarily on the vendor, and your association attorney will make sure that liability, indemnification, and everybody, and who's responsible for such.
Perfect. And we got one question, but it's really, really short. Should be a short
I'm
answer.
in no rush, so whatever anybody needs.
Do you do a 50-year recertification?
We do not. We are not an engineering firm. We are a contractor. So whatever the recertification requirement is from your engineer of record and or architect, and you need work done, then of course that certification goes into an RFP for bidding, and we bid to do the repairs. So again, our 30 years of business has primarily been doing complete exterior rebuilds of buildings. We do not build anything new except in a renovation process, but we don't build new buildings. We'll add pool cabanas, we'll add bathrooms and we'll add to an existing property, but yeah, we will completely rebuild new windows, new rails, new sliders, new concrete, new garages, new pools, whatever you need.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.